Welcome to part 1 of this Blender tutorial series where I'm going to show you how to create this Sci-Fi Security Drone in Blender. So this tutorial series is going to be completely free on my YouTube channel, and it's all going to be in step-by-step and in real time. So in this part, in part 1, we are going to start by modeling the drone's body. Then in part 2, we're going to be modeling the drone's propeller blades. And then in part 3, we're going to finish the modeling, so we'll be modeling just a few other things on the drone, like the headlights and also the guns on the bottom of the drone. Then in part 4, we're going to be lighting the scene and putting some lighting on the drone, and then we will do all of the materials. And all of the materials are going to be procedural in Blender. So we're going to be creating some cool procedural sci-fi metal, and we'll be putting that on the drone 3D model. Then in part 5, we're going to be rigging the drone, and we're going to be using a mechanical rigging method. So we're not going to be using any bones. We're going to be using a mechanical rigging method where you constrain the transforms of the objects. And then we're going to be parenting different objects to other objects. And it's a really easy and effective method for doing mechanical rigging in Blender. Then in part 6, we're going to be creating a very basic city environment. So we're going to make some buildings and then put the buildings in the background to make it look like the drone is in some sort of futuristic city. And then we're going to pose the drone and render the image and get the final finished image. And then in part 7, we're going to be doing the animation. So we're going to be animating the robot and creating this animation right here, and then we will render out the frames, and then we will compile the frames together in Blender's video editor, and we'll add in some different sound effects to get the finished animation. Now in this tutorial series, I am going to be using Blender's real-time rendering engine, Blender Eevee, but you could totally use the Cycles rendering engine if you want to. This tutorial series will work great in both Cycles and Eevee, so I'll be using Blender Eevee, but if you want a bit more realism, then you could definitely use Cycles. But Eevee does render a bit faster, so the animation will render much faster. Now, as I mentioned, this entire tutorial series is going to be completely free on my YouTube channel. But if you'd like to help support me and this channel to help me keep on creating Blender tutorials and content, then I will have links in the description to my Gumroad store and my Patreon page and the YouTube memberships. And those are all great ways to help support this channel. And on my Gumroad store and Patreon page, you can get access to procedural materials. You can also get access to 3D models and assets and all of the tutorial files. And I will also have links in the description to the project files for this tutorial series. And purchasing the tutorial files is a great way to help support this channel. And some great ways to help support the channel here on YouTube is by checking out the YouTube memberships by clicking right down there on the join button next to the subscribe button. And if you join my memberships, then you'll be helping to support the channel monthly, and you'll get some cool perks here on YouTube. And if you enjoy this tutorial series and you'd like to send me a little tip, you can also use the super thanks feature here on YouTube, and I do appreciate your support. Now before we start with the modeling, I am going to be using some reference images that I created, and we're going to be using that in the tutorial. Now you don't have to use the reference images, you can just model the drone without the reference images, but if you want the modeling process to be easier and get better proportions, then I would recommend using the reference images. So I will have a free download to the reference images on my Gumroad store and my Patreon page. You can download that for free, and then we'll be adding it into Blender to help us with the modeling. And if you're downloading the reference images on my Gumroad and you'd like to give me a little tip, you can also throw a few dollars into the price box before purchasing. That's also a great way to help support me. Now, as well as using those modeling reference images, I'm also going to be using some free online resources. So the first resource that I'm going to be using is this Studio Small 02, and this is a free HDRI from polyhaven.com, and I'm going to be putting this in the background to get some nice lighting. And I'm going to be downloading the 1K version and the HDR version, and then you can just download that. And all the links will be in the description to all the resources that I'll be using. And the next resource that I'll be using is this free building texture, and this is a free texture from Ambient CG. So again, links in the description if you'd like to download this, and I'm going to be downloading the 4K JPEG version. And so we're going to be adding this onto the buildings in the background of the scene. Now all of the other resources that I'm going to be downloading are free sound effects from freesound.org. So the first sound effect is going to be this robot high-pitched sounds. Then I'm also going to be downloading this alarm alert, and I'm going to be using this as the alarm sound that the robot makes when it detects an intruder in the animation. And then for the rotor blade spinning, I'm going to be downloading this helicopter flight sound effect. And then I'll also be downloading this helicopter sound, and we'll be combining that with the other sound effect to get a really nice sound effect for the drone flying around. And then when the robot shoots its blasters, I'm going to be using this sci-fi sound laser shot. And then for the last sound effect, I'm going to be downloading this big city sound effect, and we'll be adding this to make it sound like the robot is in a city environment. So again, links will be in the description to all the free resources. And I also wanted to give a huge thanks to all the creators of these free sound effects, and also a huge thanks to Ambient CG and Polyhaven for the free textures. Alright, so here I am in Blender, and we're going to start just by deleting everything. So I'm going to press the A key a few times to select everything, and then I'm going to press X and delete. Always make sure you delete the default cube. So I'm now going to be adding in the modeling reference images. So I'm going to press Shift A, and we're going to go right down here to Image, and then I'm going to click on Background. And here are the modeling reference images. So again, there will be a free download on my Gumroad and my Patreon to these reference images. So I'm going to first click on the front one, and then I'm going to click on Load Background Image. Now you can see the background image has been added, but it's been added pointed at our view. But I instead want this to be on the front view. So what I'm going to do is hit Alt-R and Alt-G and Alt-S. So by hitting Alt-R, Alt-G, and Alt-S, that's going to clear the rotation, the location, and the scale. So now it's back to its default position. Now I want to rotate this over so it's pointed on the front. So I'm going to press R to rotate. Let's hit X to rotate it on the X-axis, and then I can type in 90 and enter to rotate it by 90 degrees. And then if I press the 1 on the numpad, that's going to go to front view, and now you can just see that on the front view. Now I don't want to be able to see this in the perspective view. I only want to be able to see the reference images if we are in the orthographic perspective, because if you press 1 on the numpad or 3 on the numpad or 7 on the numpad, that's going to take you into the orthographic. You can see right up here in the corner it says orthographic, and you can see that everything looks very flat. However, if I'm just navigating around in the scene, you can see it says perspective. So I just want to be able to see the reference images when I'm on the side view or the front view and the top view. So to do this, I can click right over here on the object data properties. Make sure you have the reference image selected when you do this. Now right here in the settings, you can see it says show in, orthographic, and perspective. I just want to turn off the perspective because I only want to be able to see this if I'm in the front view. So now let's add the next reference image. So I'm going to press Shift A, let's go here to image, and I'm going to add a background. And this time I'm going to select the side reference, and then I can click on load background image. And then again, I'm going to press Alt-R and Alt-G and Alt-S just to bring it back there to the center. And then just make sure you turn off the perspective, but you can see the perspective is already turned off on this one. So if I press 7 on the numpad for top view, you can see there it is, but I want to be able to see this on the side view. So make sure you press 7 on the numpad to go to top view, and I can press R to rotate, and let's type in 90, and then I need to type in negative after that, and this way it's going to be negative 90. So if you type in a number, you can see right up here in the corner in the top left, it's going to show you the number. So I need to type in negative, so it's negative 90, and then enter. And then I can press the 1 on the numpad to go to front view, and I want to rotate this over. So I'm going to hit R to rotate, and I can type in 90 and then enter. So now if I press 3 on the numpad to go to side view, you can see there's the side reference. So I'm now going to press 7 on the numpad for top view, and I can add the top reference. So I'll press Shift A, let's go to image, and we can add a background. And then here's the top one, so I can just double click on this to open it up. And then again, I'll just press Alt-R, Alt-G, and Alt-S to make sure that we clear the transforms of the reference. And then because this is the top reference, it's already pointed in the right direction. So now I can press 1 and 3 and 7 on the numpad, and we can preview the references. Now I want to make sure the references are all aligned correctly. So I'm going to press Shift S. I'm going to move my mouse to the cursor to world origin and let go. This way it just makes sure the 3D cursor is in the very center of the 3D scene. So I'm actually going to start by adding in the first object. So I'm going to press Shift A. Let's go here to mesh, and I'm going to add a UV sphere. Now I want to rotate this UV sphere over, so I'm going to hit R to rotate, and we're already looking at this on the front view, so it's going to rotate that over on the y-axis because we are looking down from the front view. So I can type in 90 and then enter, and now you can see that the sphere is rotated sideways. So I'm going to use the sphere to compare the references and make sure that the references are all aligned up. So I'm going to press press 1 on the numpad, that'll go to front view, and I'm going to hold down the Z button and move my mouse into the wireframe. Now you can see that the sphere is a bit too big, so I'm going to press the tab key. That is going to take me into edit mode of the object. And then I can press S to scale, and I'm just going to scale it down and then place it there, and I can press tab to go back to object mode. So you can see that the reference is not perfectly aligned, so I need to select the reference. So just click right up there to select the reference, and I can press G to grab, and I'm going to bring it down here, and I want to put this into the center of the scene. So we're not going to be moving around the object, we're going to be instead moving around the references because the object is in the very center of the 3D scene. So select the reference and kind of move it there so it is in the very center. And you can see the robot is round on the top, so make sure that is aligning with the object. I might bring this up a little bit and also bring it over a little bit so it's in the center there. All right, so then I can click back on the sphere. I can press the tab key to go into edit mode, and just press the A key to make sure all of the object is selected. And I can press S to scale. We're just going to make that a little bit smaller and place it there. And then I can press tab to go back to object mode. All right, so there we go. This first reference now is in the very center there. So I'm now going to press 3 on the numpad to go to side view, and then I want to click right up here to select the side reference. And you can see it's a bit too high up, so I'm going to press G to grab. I'm going to hit Z to bring it down on the Z axis, and then I'm just going to stick it right there so it's aligned up with the object. And you can move it back and forth if you need to, but that actually looks good. So I can now press 7 on the numpad to go to top view, and I just want to select the top reference up here, and I want to press G to grab and kind of bring it over and make sure it is in the very center there and make sure it's aligning up with the object. So I think I need to bring it forward a little bit, so I'm going to bring it over on the y-axis and place it there. Alright, so now I can look between all of these references, and you can see that the references are all aligned up. And I should have mentioned this earlier, but if you want to see the buttons that I'm pressing, I do have the screencast keys right here, so you can see what buttons I'm pressing there in the corner. So I'm going to press 1 on the numpad to go to front view, and I'm going to select the main object. And then before we get started with the modeling, let's save the Blender file. So I'm going to click right up here on File, and then I can click on Save As. And then I will save this Blender file in a folder with my other files, and then I'm going to click on Save As. So now that we've saved the Blender file, you can just press Ctrl S, and that is the shortcut key to save the Blender file. And then also, we're not doing the animation right now. We will be doing the animation at the end of the tutorial series, but for now, we don't need the timeline. So what I'm going to do is click right here when the crosshair appears, and I can click, drag up, and then drag down, and let go, and that'll close the timeline. Let's also make this a bit smaller so we have some more space for the modeling. So I'm now going to press the tab key to go into edit mode. So I want to delete half of the sphere because then we're going to add a mirror modifier, and that way we can just model one side and it'll mirror over to the other side. So I'm going to press the A key to deselect everything. Then I can press B for the box select, and I'm going to box select all these vertices here on just this side. And make sure you are in the wireframe view when you do this, so it'll select all of the vertices going through all the way to the back. So now that I have this side selected, I can press the X key to delete, and I want to delete the vertices. So if I hold down the Z button, go back to solid view, you can see we've just deleted half of the sphere. So I'm now going to click right over here on this wrench icon, and this is going to go to the modifier properties. And I want to add the mirror modifier. So I'm going to click on add modifier, and let's go right down here under generate. It's in the center here, the mirror modifier. Now right here in the mirror modifier, there's some different settings. So there is an axis right here, and so that's going to tell it which axis is going to be mirrored over. And we have the x-axis, the y-axis, and the z-axis. Now if you look in the 3D space, you can see there is this red line going back and forth, and that is the x-axis. So we do want to click on the x-axis to turn that on so it mirrors it on the x-axis. Now you can see that right now it isn't working, and that is because we actually rotated this object over in object mode. So the object thinks that the x-axis is going back and forth like this because we rotated it over at the beginning of this video. So what I can do is in object mode, I can press Ctrl A, and then I want to apply the rotation. Now before I do that, if I hit the N key to open up the side panel, I can click right over here on item, and if you have that object selected, you can see there is a rotation, and on the Y here, you can see it's been rotated over by 90 because we did that at the starting of the video. If I press Ctrl A and then click on rotation to apply the rotation, rotation, you can see the rotation values are now 0 here on the transform of the object. And so now if I click on the x-axis mirror, it's going to mirror that over properly. So I can press the N key to close the side panel, and I can make this a bit smaller. Now I also want to click on the clipping button, and the clipping button is going to merge the center. So if I press the tab key to go into edit mode, I can press the A key to select everything, and I can press G to grab and kind of pull this out, and you can see because we have the clipping turned on, it's going to merge the center, and so the center is stuck together. So I'm now going to press the 1 on the numpad to go to front view, and I can hold down the Z button and move my mouse over to the wireframe. So I now just want to delete the side here. So I'm going to press A to deselect, and then I can press B for the box select, and I'm just going to box select all of these vertices right here and then let go. So we just have that side there selected. So I'm going to press 1 on the numpad again for front view, and then I just want to delete these, so I can press X to delete, and let's click on vertices. So now if I hold down the Z button, go back into the solid view, you can see the end there is deleted. Now I want to fill a face here because you can see this is open. So what you can do is hold down the Alt key, and then you can just select that loop right there. So hold down the Alt key and select in between the loops, and that is going to select the entire loop. So we just want to Alt select right here, and that's going to select the entire loop. Now to fill a face in here, I can press the F key, and that's going to fill a face. Let's press Ctrl S to save the Blender file. Now if I press the 1 on the numpad to go to front view and hold down the Z button and go to wireframe, you can see this is coming out a bit too much. So I want to bring the side back in a little bit. So I'm going to press G to grab, and then let's hit X to bring it over on the X-axis, and I can just bring that in a little bit. I could also press S to scale it down a little bit, and then I can also hold down the Alt key and select that loop right there, and I can press G to grab and hit X to bring it over on the X-axis and place it there, more in the center. And I want to duplicate this loop and bring it over, and we're going to use it to make this cool detail here on the side of the robot. So I'm going to press Shift D will duplicate, and then I can hit X to bring it over on the X-axis, and I'm going to stick it right there. Then I can press S to scale. We're going to make it a bit smaller, and also if you press 7 on the numpad for top view, you can kind of compare that. I'm going to press 1 on the numpad for front view, and then I want to fill a face here, because if I look here on the side, you can see it's hollow, so I'm going to press F to fill a face there, and then I can press 1 on the numpad again. So I now want to extrude this out and then extrude it down. So I'm going to press E to extrude. We're going to bring this out, and if it isn't bringing it over on the side, then you can hit X to bring it over on the X-axis, and then just stick it right there to match the reference. Then I'm going to press E to extrude again. We're going to bring this out, stick it there, and then I can press S to scale, and we're going to scale this all the way down so it fits the reference. Place it there. And then if I hold down the Z button, go into the solid view, you can see what we've created. So we're creating kind of that little shield piece there on the side. So I'll press 1 on the numpad for front view, and then I want to hold down the Z button and go back to wireframe. Now I want to add a loop cut in here and then scale it up a little bit so that this rotates over just a little bit, so it's not quite as straight. So to add a loop cut in here, I'm going to press Ctrl R. That's going to add a loop cut. You can see there's that yellow line there. You can kind of move this around, and Blender's going to show you where you can add loop cuts. So I'm going to left click, and then I'm going to right click, and that'll make sure it stays in the center. Then I can press S to scale, and I'm just going to scale this up just a little bit and place it there. So now if I go back into solid view, you can see that is just rotating over a little bit. Let's press Ctrl S again to save. Now inside this little plating piece, I want to actually extrude this back in. So what I'm going to do is press the L key with my mouse hovered over the main body, and that is going to select all the linked vertices. So I can now press the H key, and that's just going to hide those vertices. So if I press the tab key to go back to object mode, you can see they're still there, but they're just hidden from our view in edit mode. So I'm now going to press the 3 on the top of my keyboard, or you can also click right up here to go to the face select, and I just want to select this face. Now I want to inset this face, so I want to add another face inside this face. So I can press the I key, and that's going to inset the face, and I can just bring it down and place it about there. Then I want to extrude this back, so I'm actually going to press 1 on the numpad to go to front view. I can hold down the Z button and move my mouse into the wireframe. And then I can press E to extrude, and we're just going to bring it over on the X-axis. And if it isn't extruding it over on the X-axis, you can hit the X key to make sure it is bringing it over on the X-axis. And I'm just going to place it right there. So I now want to extrude it back again. So I'm going to press E to extrude again. We're going to bring that over, place it right about there, kind of where that other loop is. And then I can press S to scale and want to scale it in. And I'm just going to make it a bit smaller and place it there. So I can hold down the Z button, go back to solid view, and you can see we've added a little inset there in the side metal plating. So I can now press Alt H. That is going to unhide everything that we hid. So H will hide things and Alt H will unhide them. And then I can press the Tab key to go back to object mode. Now you can see this object is looking very blocky and also the edges are very sharp. And so I want to make the edges a little bit smooth to make it look more realistic. And then I also want to smooth out the object. So I'm first going to click on Add Modifier, and I'm going to go right here, and under Generate, I'm going to add the Bevel modifier. Now you can see the bevel modifier is going to add a bevel there on the edge. And on the bevel modifier properties, you can click on the arrow here to turn up the segments. And I want to turn these segments up to 3 so that is smoother there on the edge. And then what you can do is use the object context menu and you can click on Shade Smooth. So I use the right click select in Blender. So I hit the W key and click on Shade Smooth, but you can also just right click to bring up the object context menu and click on Shade Smooth. Or you can also click right up here on Object and then click on Shade Smooth. So by using the smooth shading, you can see it smoothed out the faces and it looks a lot better. Now the bevel is still way too big. So I can change the amount here and that's going to make it smaller. So if you want to make your movements more sensitive, when you're dragging this, you can hold down the Shift key and drag and that'll make your movements more sensitive. So I can make this much smaller and you can see now the bevel is very sharp, but there is a little bit of a bevel there and that will really help to make it look more realistic, because not everything in the real world is super sharp. Everything does have a little bit of a bevel. Now right here on the amount, I am going to be using a value of 0.002. So you can punch that in on the amount here if you want to use the same amount that I'm using. And then also I'm going to use a segments of 3. Now if you look here on the side of the robot, you can see it still looks a little bit chunky, and that is because it is still somewhat low poly. If I tap into edit mode, you can see it is somewhat low poly. Now the smooth shading does help a lot to make it more smooth, but on the side here you can see it is still a little bit bumpy. So I'm going to be adding the subdivision surface modifier to smooth it out even more. So I'm going to click on Add Modifier, and under Generate, we're going to go right down here and add the subdivision surface. And this is going to smooth out the mesh even more and make it more detailed. Now if I scroll right down here, you can see we have a viewport and a render. So the viewport is just going to be how much subdivision you can see in the viewport, but then the render is actually going to be how much it's adding during the render. We can just leave these both at 1, so I'm going to click right here just to turn that to 1. So that is looking a lot better. Now if I press the Tab key to go into edit mode and I just select a face, I can press G to grab and I can move the face around. And you can see that it's actually really laggy in the viewport, and that is because of those modifiers, especially the subdivision surface. So I'm going to press the Escape key to undo this. And then I can press the Tab key to go back to object mode. So I do want to be able to preview the subdivision surface modifier in object mode, but while I am editing the object, I don't actually need to see that extra detail. So what I'm going to do is click on this button right here, and this is going to disable the modifier in edit mode. So if I click on that, I can still see it in object mode, but if I press the Tab key to go into edit mode, you can actually see it looks more chunky now, and if I press G to grab and move this around, you can see it's much more smooth. So that'll make our modeling much more smooth in edit mode. Now you can see that these two pieces actually aren't connecting, they're kind of floating. So what I want to do is make basically like a cylinder object, and we're going to stick that there in the center. So to do this, I'm just going to select this face right here. Make sure you are in the face select when you do this so you can select the whole face. And then I'm going to press 1 on the numpad to go to front view, and I can hold down the Z button and go to wireframe. So I can now press Shift D, that's going to duplicate the face, and then you can click with your mouse wheel and then let go, and that's going to constrain this to the x-axis. And I'm going to bring it over here, and then I can scale this down, just make it smaller, and I'm going to make it a bit smaller to about there. Then I can press G to grab, and again click with your mouse wheel or hit X to constrain it to the x-axis, and I'm going to stick it inside the robot's body. So I can now press E to extrude, we're going to extrude this out, and we're going to stick it into the side plating here. Now if I look over here on the side and hold down the Z button and go back into solid view, you can kind of zoom in here, and we actually have some extra faces in here that we don't need. So to make the object lower poly, I'm just going to hit X, and then we can just click on faces. So that's just going to delete the face in there. And then I can navigate over here inside the robot or inside the drone, and you can see we have another extra face right there. So I can just select that face there in the cylinder, and I can press X, and we can just delete the faces. So by deleting any extra vertices and faces, that's just going to keep the topology a bit lower. Now I want to do some more modeling in here, but it's kind of hard to see with this plating in the way. So hover your mouse over this side plating, and you can press the L key. That's going to select all the linked vertices, and then you can press the H key to hide it. And I'm going to zoom in here, and I want to select some faces here. So make sure you are in the face select, and I want to select this face and then hold down the shift key and select this face and this face and this face. So the top 4 faces. So I'm now going to press Shift D to duplicate, and then I can hit Z to bring it up on the Z axis. And then I'm going to scale the whole thing up a little bit. Now I want to extrude this back down, so I think I'll just bring it up a little bit higher, so it's a bit higher, something like that. And then I can press E to extrude. We're going to bring this down and just bring it inside the cylinder. Now we have some extra faces here, so I'm going to hold down the shift key and select these faces, navigate in here, hold down the shift key and select these faces here, and I can press X to delete, and we're going to delete the faces because you won't be able to see those faces. Now I want to rotate this piece over, and I want to make 4 of them. So what I want to do is go right here to the vertex select, and then I can hold down the Alt key, and I'm going to select that loop right there. Now I want to center the 3D cursor into the center of that circle. So I'm going to hold down the Shift S button, and then I'm going to move my mouse over to cursor to selected and let go. This way the 3D cursor is going to jump to the center of the selection. Now normally when you rotate objects, it just rotates from the center of the selection, but I instead want to be able to rotate the selection from the center of the 3D cursor. So what I'm going to do is click right here on the transform pivot point, and I can click on a 3D cursor. And then I need to press the A key to deselect everything, and then I'm going to hover my mouse over this object here and press the L key. That's going to select the linked vertices. And if I press R to rotate, you can see it is rotating from the center of the 3D cursor now. So I now want to duplicate this and then rotate it around. So I'm going to press Shift D to duplicate. Then after that, I'm going to press R to rotate. So that's going to rotate our selection. Then I'm going to hit X to rotate it on the X axis. And then I want to rotate it over exactly by 90 degrees. So I can type in 90 and enter to rotate that over by 90 degrees. Now we did that all in one action. So I can now press Shift R, and Shift R is going to repeat the last action. So it's going to duplicate it and move it over by 90 degrees. And then I can do that again. So I can press Shift R to repeat the last action. And so now we have that cool detail going around the cylinder. Now you may notice that the shading actually looks a bit off. You can see the shading here is a bit lighter, where the shading here is a bit darker. And why this is because we need to recalculate the normals. So basically all of the faces have a front of the face and the back of the face, and we always want to be able to see the front of the faces. Now to confirm this, I'm going to press the Tab key to go back to object mode, and I'm going to zoom in here so I can see it on the side. And then I'm going to click right here to open up the overlay settings, and I can go right down here and click on face orientation. So the blue side of the faces is the front side of the face, and that's the face that we want to see. And so you don't want to see the red, you just want to be able to see the blue. And you can see that right here, these pieces are red. And so if I click right down here to show the overlays again, I can click on face orientation just to hide that. And if I tab into edit mode, I was able to see that because the shading looks a bit off, these pieces look a bit darker. So in edit mode, to recalculate the normals, I'm going to press the A key, that's going to select everything, and then I can press Shift N. And Shift N is going to recalculate the normals, and right next to me here, if you click on the recalculate normals arrow right there, just open that up, you can see there is an inside outside. So if you want to manually change this, you can click on inside and that's going to flip it, but that's not correct. You can see the shading looks weird. So I'm going to click on inside to turn that off because Blender recalculated it correctly. And then I can press Alt H. So let's tab to go back to object mode, and I can press Control S to save. Now, if I press 1 on the numpad to go to front view and hold down the Z button and go into the wireframe, if I zoom in here, you can see that there's a little cut there in the reference. So the robot has kind of a little lip there in the body. So let's add that. So I'm going to press the tab key to go into edit mode, and you can see this loop cut is already almost there on the edge, but I am just going to hold down the Alt key and select that loop right there. I can press G to grab, hit X to bring it over on the X axis and stick it there. And then I want to add another loop here, so I'm going to press Control R to add a loop cut. I can left click and then drag over, and then left click again to place it. And then just to make it fit the curve better, I'm going to press S to scale. Let's scale it up just a little bit, and you can see it's actually scaling up on the center there of the 3D cursor, and that's because we still have the pivot point set to 3D cursor. So let's just click on this, and I'm going to change this back to the median point. So I can now press S to scale. I'm just going to scale it up a little bit and then place it there. So it just fits the roundness of the robot's body better. So now what I'm going to do is click right here to go to the face select, or you can press the 3 on the top of your keyboard. And I'm going to hold down the Alt key and click right here to select that loop of faces. So if I go back into solid view real quick, you can see we've selected that loop of faces there by holding down the Alt key and then just selecting that loop. So I can press 1 on the numpad for front view, hold down the Z button, go to wireframe, and I just want to extrude this and scale it down. So I'm going to press E to extrude, but then right after that, I want to press S, and that is going to scale it. Now I don't want to scale it in on the X axis, I just want to scale it down. So I'm going to press Shift X. So by pressing Shift X, it's not going to scale it on the X axis, but it's still going to scale it on the Z and the Y. And I'm just going to scale this down and then click to place it there when it matches the reference. If I zoom in here, you can see there is that little inset there on the robot's forehead. So I'm going to select this face right here, hold down the Z button, go into solid view. And you can see I actually selected the back one, so I just need to click right here to select the one on the front. I now want to inset this face to make it smaller, and I want to make a face inside this face. So I'm going to hold down the Z button and move my mouse into the wireframe, and then I'm going to press the I key, and that's going to inset the face. Now you can see it's insetting it, but it's not connecting to the mirror. So I'm now going to press the B key, and that is going to toggle the boundary. So you can see right up here it says boundary on, but if I press the B key, now it says boundary off. And I can scale that down and just make it fit the reference and click to place that there. And then I can hold down the Z button and go back into the solid view. And then I can press the period on the numpad, and that's going to zoom me into that face there. Now I want to extrude it back in, so I'm going to press E to extrude. We're just going to bring that in probably about that far and click to place that there. All right, so if I press the tab key now to go back to object mode, you can see there is a problem here. And this is because of the subdivision surface modifier. So the subdivision surface modifier adds more geometry and it smooths out the mesh. But you can see there's a problem there. There's kind of a glitch there. So I need to add a little bit more geometry here on both sides. So just press the tab key again to go into edit mode, and then press the 1 on the top of your keyboard, or click right here to go to the vertex select. I now want to click right here to select that vertex, and then hold down the shift key and select that vertex. So both of those two vertices are selected. I'm now going to press Control B. Control B is going to add a manual bevel, so you can see we're beveling that edge. And then I want to scroll my mouse wheel once, and that is going to add a loop there in the bevel. And I'm just going to bring that out to about that big, and then click to place that there. And then I want to do the same thing over here, so I'm going to select this vertex, go inside here, hold down the shift key and select this vertex, and I want to do the same thing, so I'm going to press Control B and I'm going to click to place that there. So if I now press the tab key to go back to object mode, you can see because we have more geometry, now it's fixing it, so that is looking great. So I now want to create that cool sci-fi plating, which is going to be around the robot. So let's tab back into edit mode, and I'm going to click right up here to go to the face select. And I'm going to press 7 on the numpad to go to top view. And if I hold down the Z button and go into wireframe, you can see that plating there. So I'm going to hold down the Z button, go back to solid view, and I want to select these faces here. So hold down the shift key so you can select multiple faces, and I'm going to select all of those 6 faces. And you can go back into the wireframe view to see the reference, and those are the faces I want to select. Then I can hold down the Z button, go back to solid view. I'm going to hold down the shift key and select all of these faces right here. And then I want to go right down here and select these ones as well. All right, and this is 6 faces there going down. And then there's a space here, and then there's going to be 3 more. Then I'm going to have another space here, and I'm going to select more. So I'm going to hold down the shift key and select these here. And this is going to be another 4 faces going down. So select those 4 faces. Then I'm going to skip another one, and then I'm going to continue to select more here. And then this one here is going to be 5 total. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So again, I'm going to skip one face, and then I can hold down the shift key and select this one. And this one here is just going to be 3. So there we go. Those are all the ones that I want to select. You can also press 3 on the numpad to go to side view, and you can see the plating. So you can see the plating that I've selected is aligning up with the references. All right, so I'm going to go back into solid view. So I want to duplicate these faces, and then I'm going to scale them up a bit because I want the plating to be bigger. So I'm going to press Shift D to duplicate. Then I'm going to hit S to scale, and I'm going to scale this up just a little bit. If I press 3 on the numpad for side view and go into the wireframe, I can kind of see how much this is popping out. So maybe not even that much. Bring that down a little bit. So just scale it up so that those faces are a little bit higher. Now I don't want these pieces to be overlapping the crease here that we made. So I'm going to press S to scale, and I'm going to scale this on the X-axis and just bring it in a little bit and place it there. So this way it's not quite as far out on the X-axis, and so when I extrude this back down, it won't be overlapping. Now I want to extrude these faces back in, but I want to extrude the faces in along the direction of the faces. So I want to extrude these back in so that they're going in along the direction of where the face is pointing. So to do this, I can extrude the faces along their normals. So to do this, you can press Ctrl F, and then I'm going to click on extrude faces along normals. And then I can drag my mouse, so whichever way the face is pointing, that's where it's going to be extruding. So I just want to bring this back in here, click to place that there when they're inside, and then we have a bunch of extra faces inside here that we don't need. So I can press X to delete, and I just want to click on faces. So now we've deleted those extra faces. And then you can also see the shading looks a bit weird, and that's because we extruded it back instead of up. So we just need to recalculate the normals. So just press the A key to select everything, and you can press Shift N, and that's going to recalculate the normals. And then if I zoom in here to the plating, I think the plating is actually a little bit too high up. So I'm going to press the L key with my mouse hovered over the plating, and I'm going to do that for all the plating. So press the L key and the L key just to select the linked vertices. So now that I have all those selected, I can zoom in here, and I'm just going to press S to scale, and I'm going to scale them all down and in a bit, and then place that right there. And I can tab to go back to object mode, and that's looking much better. And you can see the subdivision surface modifier is also smoothing that out a bit. Let's press Ctrl S again to save. So I now want to create the eye or the camera on the front of the robot. So I'm going to press Shift S, and let's go to cursor to world origin and let go. That'll just make sure the 3D cursor is in the very center. So I want the eye object to be a separate object, so make sure you're in object mode when you do this. So I'm going to press Shift A, and we're going to go here to mesh, and I am going to add a UV sphere. And then I'm going to press the tab key to go into edit mode, and I want to rotate the sphere over, so I can hit R to rotate. Let's rotate this on the X-axis, and I can type in 90 and enter. And then I can tab to go back to object mode, and I'm going to bring this over, so I'll press G to grab. Let's hit Y to bring it over on the Y-axis, and then I can scale this down and make it much smaller. Let's also press 1 on the numpad to go to front view, and I can hold down the Z button to go to wireframe, and this way I can preview the reference images. And I actually want to scale this up a bit bigger and just place it to the reference, make sure it fits the reference. I can also press 7 on the numpad for top view, and you can see it's too far out, so I need to bring it back. So I can press G to grab, bring it back on the Y-axis, and I'm going to bring that in there and place it about there. And I'm going to bring it back, and then I can also scale it down a little bit and place it there. And then I can also press 3 on the numpad to go to side view and kind of compare that. So I think I want to scale it down a bit more and bring it back in a little bit. All right, that is pretty good. Let's go back to front view, see how that's looking, and go to top view. Now, if I hold down the Z button, go back to solid view, you can see there's actually a bunch of extra vertices here that we don't need. We just want to see the front of the eye, but we don't really need to see all the extra vertices back in here. So I'm going to press 3 for side view. I can hold down the Z button, go to wireframe, and then press the tab key to go into edit mode. And I'm going to click right here to go to the vertex select. And then I can deselect everything with the A key. I can press B for the box select. I'm just going to box select all the faces here on the back. And I can press X to delete, and let's delete the vertices. And then also right here on the front, you can see there actually is some extra stuff here on the front. So I'm going to press B for the box select. We're just going to box select the front vertices. I can press X to delete, and let's delete the vertices. And then I can hold down the Z button and go back to the solid view. All right, so here's the eye object. Now I want to fill a face there and actually extrude this back in. So I'm going to hold down the Alt key and just select that loop right there. And then let's press 1 on the numpad to go to front view. I can hold down the Z button and go to the wireframe. So I now want to extrude this and then scale it in. So I'm going to press E to extrude and then S to scale. We're going to scale that in and place it about there. And if I go back into solid view, you can see what we've done. So we've just scaled that in. And then I want to extrude it in and back. So I'm going to press E to extrude, and let's hit Y to bring it over on the Y axis. And I'm going to bring that in. And then if you press 1 on the numpad for front view and go back into wireframe, I want to press S to scale and scale it down and just fit that to the reference right about there. And then I want to fill a face here, so I can just press the F key, and that's going to fill a face. Now you can see that the back object is overlapping, so I'm just going to tab to go back to object mode. I can press G to grab, and let's bring this out on the Y axis just a little and place it there. Maybe even bring that out a bit more, so G to grab, bring it out on the Y axis and stick it there, just so it's a little bit farther out. Now you can see that this isn't very smooth, it's very blocky, so I actually want to add the same modifiers as the other object. So what I can do is just select this object here, hold down the shift key and select the body object, and then I'm going to press Control L. So Control L will bring up the link and transfer data, and I want to click on copy modifiers. So this way, this object is going to copy the modifiers from this object. Now, I don't actually want this object to have the mirror modifier. We're not going to need the mirror modifier. So if I click on this object and go right over here to the modifier properties, I can click on the X button here to get rid of the mirror modifier. But then I do want the bevel modifier, so it bevels the edges, and the subdivision surface modifier, so it smooths it out. And then you can just use the object context menu to shade the object smooth. So now we have that nice smooth eye object. So now I want to add some more details in the center of the eye. So I'm going to press the tab key to go back to edit mode, and I'm going to click right here to go to the face select and just select this face here. And I can press the period on the numpad just to zoom over to the face. So I want to duplicate this and bring it forward. So I'm going to press Shift D to duplicate. Let's hit Y to bring it on the Y axis, place it there. And then I can scale this down with the S key and just scale it down a bit smaller. And then I want to extrude this back in. So I'm going to press E to extrude that back. And then we can just delete the extra face that's inside there. So I can press X to delete, and let's delete the faces. And then you can see the normals need to be recalculated. So press the A key to select everything, and I can press Shift N to recalculate the normals. And now that shading looks correct. So then I want to select this face again, and I actually want to press the L key to select all the linked vertices, and I want to duplicate this and make another ring. So I'm going to press Shift D to duplicate. Let's bring this out on the Y axis, make that a bit farther out, and then I can scale the entire thing down, and we're going to bring it down about that small. And then something else that I also noticed is that the bevel is actually a lot smaller than the bevel right here. You can see this bevel is very small, whereas this bevel is a little bit bigger, and this is because we actually scaled down the object in object mode. So to fix this, I can just tab to go to object mode, and I can press Control A, and then I can click on scale, and that's going to apply the object scale. So this is now its new default scale. So you can see now that bevel there is a little bit bigger, and I do like that better. So let's press the tab key to go back to edit mode. Now right here in the very center of the eye, I want to add kind of like a glass piece where the camera is going to be. So I'm going to press Shift S, go to cursor to world origin and let go. That'll again make sure the 3D cursor is in the very center. And I can now press Shift A and we're going to add another UV sphere. And make sure you are in edit mode when you do this, so it adds the sphere in edit mode so it's in the same object. So I can press S to scale, let's scale this down, and I can press G to grab, let's bring this over on the Y-axis, place it there, and I can scale it down so it's even smaller. And then I want to rotate this over, so I can hit R to rotate, let's hit X to rotate it on the X-axis, and I can type in 90 and enter. And then let's bring this back, so I'll press G and Y to bring it back on the Y-axis, and I can press S and scale that down. So if I press 1 on the numpad to go to front view, I can zoom in here, and I'm going to hold down the Z button and go into wireframe, and then I can just scale this to fit the reference. So I'll make it a bit bigger, place it there. Alright, go back to solid view, and that's looking good. I think I also want to bring it forward a little bit, so I'm going to press G to grab, bring this over on the Y-axis and bring that out, and then maybe scale it down a little bit. Alright, tab back into object mode, that's looking good, so I can use the object context menu to shade this smooth. Now again, if I tab into edit mode, we have a bunch of extra vertices here in the back. So to keep this object's topology as low as possible, I'm going to press 3 on the numpad to go to side view. I can hold down the Z button and go into wireframe. And then I'm going to click right here to go to the vertex select. And then I just want to deselect the part that I can see. So I'm going to press B for the box select. And then I'm going to click with my middle mouse wheel and I'm going to drag over and then let go. So by clicking with your middle mouse wheel, that's going to deselect things instead of selecting them. So if I navigate over here and go into solid view, you can see we just have the back there selected. So I can press X to delete, and let's delete the vertices, but you can still see all the front there. Alright, now I also want to have kind of like a metal ring on the outside of this object. So I'm going to hold down the Alt key and just select that loop right there. I can now press Shift D to duplicate and then S to scale. We're going to scale that up, place it there. And I can press 1 on the numpad to go to front view, and I'm going to hold down the Z button and go into wireframe. And then I can press S to scale again. Let's scale this up a bit bigger and just make it fit the reference, place it there. And then I can press 3 on the numpad to go to side view, and I can press G to grab. Let's bring this back on the Y-axis, and I'm going to place that there. And then I want to fill a face here, so I can press the F key. That's going to fill a face there. So then back over on side view, I want to extrude this back into the robot's body. So I can press E to extrude. Let's bring this back into the body, and then we can again delete this extra face here. So I can just press X to delete, and let's delete the faces. Hold down the Z button, go back into solid view, and you can see that object that we added is actually inside here, so we're not really able to see it. So I'm going to navigate inside here, and I'm going to hover my mouse over the object and press the L key. That's going to select the linked vertices. And I want to bring it forward, so I'm going to press G to grab. Let's bring it forward on the Y-axis and place it about there. And then I actually want to just press the tab key to go to object mode, and I want to bring the whole thing forward a bit. So I can press G to grab, and let's bring this forward on the Y-axis, and I'm going to stick that about there. So I can now tab to go back into edit mode, and I can press G to grab, and let's bring it back on the Y-axis and stick it about there. Alright, that's pretty good. And if I press 1 on the numpad to go to front view, go into wireframe, I think I might just want to scale this down a little bit more. Alright, back into solid view, and you can see the normals need to be recalculated because the shading looks a bit weird. So just press the A key to select everything, and you can press Shift N to recalculate the normals. And I can tab to go back to object mode, and you can see the shading is a bit flat there, so I just need to use the object context menu to shade the object smooth. Now I want to look at the reference again, so I'm going to go to front view and go into wireframe. And if you zoom in here, you can see that there is a little metal plating, kind of like what we did here on the top. There's that little metal plating there, and there is one here on this side and then over on this side. So I want to do the same thing for what I did for the body. So I want to duplicate those faces, scale them up, and then we can extrude them back in along the object's normals. So I can hold down the Z button and go back to solid view, and I'm going to tab to go into edit mode. So to select the faces, I'm going to click right here on the face select, and then I can hold down the Alt key and I'm going to select those faces right there. So select the whole ring of faces. And then I want to hold down the Shift and Alt key and select that ring of faces right there. Now I don't want the entire ring to be selected, I just want the sides to be selected. So I'm going to press B for the box select, and then I'm going to click down with my middle mouse wheel, and I'm going to drag over and then let go, and I'm going to deselect the top 4 faces there, and also the back ones there. And then I want to do the same thing down here, so navigate down here. I'm going to press B for the box select, and I can click with my middle mouse button, drag over here, and then let go, and that'll select those 4 faces. So we just have this side selected and this side selected. So I now want to duplicate these, so I'm going to press Shift D to duplicate. Then I can press S to scale, and we're going to make this a bit bigger and just place that about there. Now I want to extrude it back in, but I want to extrude it along its normals. So I'm going to press Control F. That'll bring up the face settings, and I want to extrude faces along normals. And then I can drag my mouse and I want to bring that in there, just stick it inside the object, place it there. And then if you go inside here again, you can see there's some extra faces in there. So I'm going to press X to delete, and let's delete the faces. And then again, if I navigate around here, you can see the normals need to be recalculated because these faces are darker. So press the A key to select everything, and you can press Shift N to recalculate the normals. Let's tab to go back to object mode. I can kind of zoom out here, and I can press Control S to save. So that is it for the eye object. So just like we did right up here with this metal plating, I want to add some other bits of plating right here. So I want to add 4 of them going along this piece here. So I'm going to press the tab key to go back into edit mode, press the A key to deselect, and I want to zoom in here, and I want to select the 4 top faces. So I can press B for the box select, I can click and drag to select those 4 top faces, and then I want to do the same thing over here on the side. So I want to select the 4 faces in the middle. So you can see this line right here is in the very center. So I'm going to press B for the box select and just drag a box over these faces and let go. So we now have those 4 selected. Let's do the same thing down here. So B for the box select, we're going to select these 4 here, and it's actually 8, but I'm saying 4 because the 4 along the inside there. And that one there is going straight down, so that's the one we want to select, and then B for the box select and box select those 8 faces there. And if you want to, you can press 3 on the numpad to go to side view, hold down the Z button, go to wireframe, and you can compare that with the references. So it's a little bit hard to see because there is like that rotor blade object there, but you can see right there, there's those little bolts and there's the metal plating. All right, so that's looking good. Let's hold down the Z button, go back to solid view. I can just navigate out here. And so I now want to duplicate these faces and bring them out. So I'm going to press Shift D to duplicate, and then I'm going to press S to scale. We're going to scale them up just a little bit, not too much, but just a little bit. And then I can press 1 on the numpad to go to front view, and I want to bring this out to the side a bit. So I'm going to press G to grab. Let's hit X to bring it over on the X-axis, and I can bring that out a bit, just like that. And then I want to scale these down so that they're a bit smaller, because right now if I extrude that back in, it would be overlapping on this bevel right here. So I want to make these a bit smaller. But if I press S to scale, it's just going to scale them all together. I instead want to just scale them individually. So I'm going to click right here to go to the transform pivot point, and I'm going to change this to individual origins. So I can now press S to scale. I can scale this down, and you can see now they're being scaled down individually by their individual origins. So I'm going to scale this down just a little bit and then place that there. All right, just like that. So again, I want to extrude these in along their normals. So I'm now going to press Control F, and let's click on extrude faces along normals. I can bring it in and place it there. All right, and then we have some extra faces right inside there. If you hold down the Z button, go to wireframe, you can see there's some extra faces in there. So I can press X to delete, and we'll delete the faces because we're not going to see those faces, so we can just delete them. Hold down the Z button and go back to solid view. And then again, you can see that the normals need to be recalculated because the shading is a bit darker here. So press the A key to select everything, and I can press Shift N to recalculate the normals. And that is it for the metal plating on that outer piece. So before we finish this part of the tutorial series, I want to create some bolts, and we're going to put the bolts around the object. So make sure you are in edit mode, and I'm going to press Shift A, and let's go right here and add a cylinder. and it's going to add the cylinder there in the center. Now before you click away or before you move the cylinder around, right next to me you can click on the arrow here to open up the add cylinder settings. And if I go right up here on the vertices, I want to change the vertices just to 16, and this way the cylinder will be a bit lower poly. And then I can click on the arrow here to close the add cylinder settings. Now right down here, if I click on this face, I don't need the bottom face, so I can just press X and let's just delete the faces. And then with my mouse hovered over the object, I can press the L key, and that's going to select the linked vertices. Now right now, if I try to move this out, you can see it's actually merging with the mirror, and so it's stretching it and merging that together. So what I want to do is click right here to turn off the clipping on the mirror modifier. Then I can press G to grab, I can bring this out, I can press S to scale this down, and I also want to scale this down on the Z axis and bring that down like that. And then now that this is out of the way of the mirror, I can click on the clipping to turn that back on. And let's also scale this much smaller, and I'm going to press G to grab, bring it here kind of to the top. And I can press 7 on the numpad for top view, hold down the Z button and go into wireframe, and I can press G to grab, and I'm going to bring this over here, and I can kind of compare it to the size on the reference. So I'm going to scale this down even more, make it quite a bit smaller, something like that, just place it there. Alright, hold down the Z button, go back to solid view, and I can press the period on the numpad to zoom into the bolt. Now the bolt is a little bit small right now, so I want to press S to scale. I'm going to scale it up on the Z axis and make it a bit bigger, so about like that. And then I can tab to go back to object mode, and I can use the object context menu to shade this smooth in object mode. Alright, so I can now tab to go back into edit mode. Now I want to duplicate the bolts and put the bolts all along the object, but moving them around and placing them manually would take a lot of time, so I'm going to instead use Blender's snapping feature. So the first thing that I want to do is click right here on the individual origins, and I just want to change this back to the median point. Now to use Blender's snapping feature, I can click on this button right here. This is going to turn on the snapping. So now if I zoom out here, I can press G to grab, move this around, and you can see that the selection is snapping to increments. Now instead of it snapping to increments, I instead want it to snap to the faces. So I'm going to click right here to change the snapping settings, and I want to change the snap to the face project. So this way, if I press G to grab, you can now see that the selection is always snapping to the front of the faces there. Now I also want it to rotate to the faces rotation. So if I click right back here on the settings, I want to click on align rotation to target. So I can now press G to grab, and you can see that it is aligning the rotation to the rotation of the faces. And then there is one more thing that I want to do. I want to have the bolt going down a bit more. So I want it to be going inside the object a little bit. So I'm going to click right here again to go to the snap settings, and you can see we have a snap width. So right now it's set to closest, but I want to instead click on center. So this way, if I press G to grab, now you can see that it's going to snap to the center of the selection. So the bolt is going through the object a little bit. So now I can press G to grab, and I can just stick that bolt right there, and then I can press Shift D to duplicate, and I can stick another bolt there. And I can just continue to do this and duplicate the bolts and put them all around the object. So I'm going to press Shift D to duplicate, put one in the corner there, and then I can navigate down here, Shift D to duplicate, let's put another one there in the corner, Shift D to duplicate, let's stick one there, then I can navigate down here, Shift D to duplicate, stick it there, Shift D to duplicate, we'll put another one there, and just continue to move over and then duplicate this and stick it there. So I'll duplicate this again, put another one there, and also let's put one right up here. And then I also want to put 4 bolts on the edges of this plating. So I'm going to duplicate that, stick it there, duplicate that, and let's stick that there. Duplicate this again, we're going to stick that there, and again we'll put another one there, and then I can do that for the other ones. So duplicate that, and just continue to do that all around the plating. All right, and then 4 here. So duplicate that, put that there, and then right here on the bottom, Shift D to duplicate, and we're going to move this down and stick it there in the corners. And it's super helpful that it also rotates to the rotation of the face, because now all the bolts are sticking out in the correct angles. And then if for some reason you deselected a bolt, you can just hover your mouse over the bolt and press the L key. That's going to select the linked vertices. So I actually want to put some bolts around here as well. So I'm going to press Shift D to duplicate, and I want to bring this up, and I want to stick a bolt right here. Now you can see that this object here is actually a little bit small. So I'm going to press the Tab key to go back to object mode, and then I'm going to click on the eye object, and I can press the Tab key to go into edit mode. Now, when I'm editing this object, I want to turn off the snapping, so I can just click right here to turn off the snapping for now. And I just want to scale up this part and make it a bit bigger. So we already are in the face select mode, so I can hold down the Alt key and just select that loop of faces. I can press S to scale, and let's scale that up a bit and stick it there, so it's a bit bigger. And then I can press Tab to go back to object mode. So let's now select this object here, the body object, tab into edit mode, and then make sure you click right here to turn the snapping back on. And then with your mouse hovered over the bolt, you can press the L key. That's going to select the linked vertices. And I'm going to press Shift D to duplicate. Let's put another one there. Then I can press Shift D to duplicate. We're going to put another one right there on the side. And then I want to add two here in the center. So I can press Shift D to duplicate. We'll put one about there in the center and duplicate this. And we're going to put another one there. Let's press Ctrl S again to save. So I now want to add some here in the center edge. So I'm going to press Shift D to duplicate, put one there, and Shift D to duplicate, we'll put it there. Let's go right up here to the very top here, duplicate that again, put it there, and duplicate another one and put it there. Let's go here to the back and then duplicate that, put it there, and we'll duplicate another one and put it there. And then down here on the bottom as well. So go to the very bottom loop, duplicate that and put it there, and duplicate another one and stick it there. All right, you can press the Tab key to go back to object mode, and that is looking really cool. It's looking very sci-fi, and it has a lot more details. Now, before we finish this part, there is just one more little detail that I want to put here inside this little area in between the plating out here and the robot's body. So I'm going to press the Tab key to go into edit mode, and then I'm going to click right here to go to the face select. And then I want to click right here to select this face. And then also make sure that you turn the snapping feature off. I'm now going to press Shift D to duplicate. Let's bring this over on the X-axis and just bring it out a little bit. And then I can press S to scale. We're going to scale that down a bit. And then I'm going to press E to extrude, and we're going to extrude that back in a bit. And then if I select this face here, I can press G and X, and I want to push that in a little bit. And then I just want to inset this face, so I'm going to press the I key. That's going to inset the face there. I'm going to inset that and scale it down just a little bit right there. And if you wanted to, you could also hide that object, but it's easy enough for me just to look at it here on side view. And then I want to press E to extrude, and I want to extrude this part back in. So now we have that cool little circle in there. And then inside here, we don't actually need that extra face in there. So I can press X to delete, and I just want to delete the faces. Now again, we need to recalculate the normals, so press the A key to select everything, and I can press Shift N to recalculate the normals. And then I do want to add some bolts in there, so let's do that. So I want to get this part out of the way so I can't see it. So I'm going to click right here to go to the vertex select. I can hold down the Z button, go into wireframe, and I'm going to press A to deselect everything. So I can press B for the box select. I'm just going to box select all of the vertices here. And then I can press the H key, and that's just going to hide it. So I can hold down the Z button, go back to solid view, and you can see now that part is hidden. So I now just want to go up here to one of the bolts, and I'm going to press the L key with my mouse hovered over the bolt. That'll just select the entire bolt. And then again, let's click right here to turn the snapping back on. And then this is easier to do on side view, so you can press 3 on the numpad to go to side view. So I'm going to press Shift D to duplicate. Let's just stick that right there. Shift D to duplicate again. Let's stick another one here. And then just continue to duplicate this. We're going to put one here and also one right over here. And then I want to duplicate these again and put some in the center. So if I press Shift D to duplicate, you can see there's 1, 2, 3, 4. And then this is the very center. And then there's 1, 2, 3, 4. So we're just going to put this right there in the center. Shift D to duplicate. And I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4. Put that one right there. I can duplicate duplicate this again and then go 4 faces over. So right there, put that in the center, and then Shift D to duplicate again, and we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, and just stick that right there in the center. All right, hold down the Z button. Let's go back to solid view. I can press Alt H, and that's going to unhide everything. I can press the Tab key to go back to object mode, and then just to make sure everything is shaded smooth, using the object context menu, you can shade this smooth. All right, let's press Control S again to save, and this is going to wrap it up for part 1 of the tutorial series. So the base body of the Sci-Fi Security Drone is finished. So thank you so much for watching this part. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you were easily able to follow along. And I will be uploading 1 part each day of the tutorial series, so when part 2 is released, it'll be right up there on the end screen, and I will also have the link in the video description. And in part 2, we're going to be creating those arms, which are holding the rotor blades, and we're going to be modeling those blades. And again, if you enjoy these tutorial series and you'd like to help support me and this channel, I will have links in the description to my Gumroad store and my Patreon page and the YouTube memberships. Those are really great ways to help support the channel so I can keep on creating Blender tutorials and Blender content. And all of your support really does help. So I hope you enjoyed this, thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next part, part 2.